the first book of Samuel, session number 20. And we continue now with chapter 9. Saul is chosen to be king after Israel said to Samuel, they don't want God to be their king anymore. They want a human being, just like the nations around them. And we saw that God warned them, this is what the kings that you choose over you will do to you. You will be made into slaves. So now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorah, the son of Aphiah, a Benjaminite, a mighty man of power. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly young man. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. Now let's just stop here. Yes, I know that God told Samuel that he will show him who must be king over the people. But I want you to rewind a little bit. Remember how even through the death of Abel, when Cain chose to kill Abel, out of that God still showed how his firstborn son, even although Seth was the thirdborn son, even through the bloodline of the woman of the tree of life, the godly chosen bloodline, although Cain killed Abel, God's purpose still panned out. Even through the evil things that Joseph's brothers did to him, and the choices that Pharaoh made against God, God's plans still did fan out. And here, even against the evil choices of the people of Israel, who wants to have a king like the pagan nations around them, God is still going to see that his plan works out. And first of all, we are going to get an Antichrist figure. Saul is the Antichrist figure. He starts out to be a wonderful man of God, a good son. There was nobody else like him. He was very tall. He was very handsome. And Samuel loved Saul so much. He loved him with all his heart. And God also loved Saul. But Saul chose rebellion. Just like Lucifer, who was the covering cherub on the mercy seat, on the throne of God, covering God's presence with his wings. God loved him just like he loved all his other cherubim. He was a choice man. His father was a mighty man of power. God was his father, mighty man of power. And out of this powerful position, out of this wonderful son of God, who were more beautiful than all the other angels, the Bible says so. You got so proudful because of your beauty. He was like Saul, from the shoulders up, he was higher than any of the people. From his position in heaven, Lucifer was higher than all the other angels. He was a goodly angel. He was a choice angel, and there was nobody like him. Just like Saul, he was a good son from a mighty man of power. There was nobody like him. Verse 3. And the asses of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. We know asses are donkeys. I don't know where the name ass came from. And Kish said to Saul his son, take now one of the servants with you and arise, go seek the asses. Interestingly, we know that our God chose out of all the animals, he chose the ass. He chose the ass with, what was the guy's name? Biliam. Biliam, who had to go curse the children of Israel in the book of Numbers, remember. It was an ass that he rode upon. And it's amazing how even the Old Testament said our Messiah will ride on an ass, on a donkey. And here it was the humble ass chosen by God to lure Saul to meet with Samuel. Because as Saul went looking for the asses, he eventually stumbled upon Samuel. And then God said to Samuel, here comes the man that I have chosen that you must anoint to become king. So the donkeys wasn't really lost. They weren't really gone. They were just walking in a certain direction, making sure that Kish would send his good and favorite and tallest son to go and search for them. So he passed through Mount Ephraim, and he passed through the land of Shalisha, but they didn't find them. And do you know what's so interesting about the Hebrew? I hope you can remember what Ephraim means. Ephraim means double portion. Remember when Jacob blessed Joseph's 2 sons? He gave the double portion of the firstborn son, not to Joseph, but to his son Ephraim. And of course, Ephraim represents the Gentile 10 tribes. So it's amazing how Saul travels through Ephraim, which means double portion, and then he travels through Shalisha. Now, Shalisha means trebled land, like triple land, like a triple portion. Isn't it amazing? He travels through double portion, and then he travels through triple portion, but he doesn't find the asses. Then they passed through the land of Shalim, they weren't there not. And then they passed through the land of the Benjaminites, but they found not the asses. And when they were come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servants that was with him, Come, let us return, lest my father leave caring for the asses, and take thought for us. So here Saul realizes that it's taking way too long. Remember, these guys are on foot. So passing through all these different regions and not finding the donkeys, he said, my father will worry too much about me. And he will stop looking for the donkeys and he will start sending out search parties for me. So I think we need to go back. And it's indeed true, because if we go to chapter 10, verse 2, Samuel is taking oil to anoint Saul as king. And he says, Go back to your father's house, because the donkeys which you wanted were found. And now your father doesn't care about the donkeys anymore. And he sorrows and he cries for you and said, What shall I do to find my son? So it's actually very nice of Saul to think about his father. All right, so let's continue. And he said unto him, Behold now, there is in the city a man of God, and he is an honorable man. All that he says comes surely to pass. Let us go there. Maybe he can show us our way that we should go. So the servant of Saul knew that Samuel the prophet was in the city, and on the physical level, maybe he can show us the way that we must go to find the donkeys. But Samuel Shemael is indeed there to show Saul the way in which he must go. Samuel has been preaching and teaching and pleading with Saul to stay upon the way of Yahuwah. But Samuel couldn't get it right, just like he couldn't train his own 2 sons, because the wickedness, the seed from the serpent tree, were in his sons' hearts, like it was in Saul's heart. And that's why David was a man after God's own heart, because David loved God, the seed from the tree of life, the seed of the word, the Torah. If you read Psalm 119, you'll see how much David loved the word of God. And that seed, the seed of the word that's planted in your heart, that is the seed that makes of you a good or a bad person. And here, although it looks like Saul was a good person in the beginning, the seed of evilness, the seed of pride, the Luciferian Antichrist pride and rebellion and wanting to do what is good for me, my selfish, lustful, sinful nature, that seed was inside of him. So the way that this servant said Samuel will show to Saul is the way that Samuel was supposed, or that Saul was supposed to listen to. If only Saul listened to the way that Samuel gave him, he would have remained on the throne. But we know that God knows the end from the beginning. And for some reason, he chose this man from the tribe of Benjamin, son of my right hand, because the royal tribe is Judah. And Saul is not from Judah, he's from Benjamin. He's from the place where the royal king must come from, Benjamin, son of my right hand. But yet, God always shows us the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. He shows us the true Christ and the Antichrist. He shows us the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. He proves this beautifully to us through these ancient stories, even when his own hand is involved in making the final choice. The people want a king. God gave them this specific king because he has a lesson for all of Israel and the rest of humanity to follow that will read these scriptures. He's got a lesson to teach to us. So yes, I agree with the servant of Saul. There is indeed an honorable man in the city that can show you the way that you must go. Saul, you must listen to this man. You must shema Samuel. Then said Saul to his servant, But behold, if we go, what shall we bring to the man? For the bread is spent in our vessels. We have no bread left, and there is not a present to bring to this man of God. What do we have? So, of course, it was custom if you want to go see the prophet. Remember, the prophet is there to serve the people of God, but nobody pays him a salary. So if you go to see him and you ask advice of him, or you want to spend time with him, or you want him to help you with something, it's just decent. Give the man something. He must also love. Just like the people working in God's kingdom, they must love. You go and meet with them and you take their time and you want something from them. Take something as a present. God taught us that freely we received, freely we give. But there's nothing wrong with taking a present to somebody that you go and see for advice. And the servant answered Saul again and said, Behold, I have here at hand the 4th part of a shekel of silver. That will I give to the man of God to tell us our way. Wow. I'm thinking of the servant of Abraham. I hope you can remember when we discussed how Abraham sent his servant with 10 camels to find a bride for his son. And here we have God the Father, we have the Ruach HaKodesh, we have the Son of God and the bride of the Son of God. And here in the heart, in the attitude of this servant, all he has, Saul doesn't even have money with him. But this servant, maybe it might be his own money that he earned. His boss, Saul and Kish, didn't give him the money for free. This is out of his own pocket. He's got a 4th part. He's got a 1/4 of a shekel. He's got a tiny piece of money. And he says, this I will give to the servant of God. Because it's important for me that we find the right way. And I need to take you back to your father. I am a good and faithful servant. Ha! What a servant. Wish we can find these today. Before time in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, thus he spoke, Come and let us go to the seer. For he that is now called a prophet was before time called a seer. So this is just in brackets in the King James Version, because when you see a prophet, when you go to visit him, another name for a prophet is a seer, somebody who can see. Why can he see? Because God opens his eyes. A seer is somebody who gets visions from God. Then said Saul to his servant, Well said, well done, good and faithful servant, well said. Come, let us go. So they went into the city where the man of God was. And as they went up the hill to the city, they found young maidens going out to draw water, and said unto them, Is the seer here? Interesting how Isaac's bride was found drawing water at the well. Jacob's wife was found drawing water at the well. Yeshua found the woman drawing water at the well. And here Saul finds the woman drawing water at the well. And they answered him and said, He is, behold, he is before you. Make haste now, for he came today to the city. For there is a sacrifice of the people today in the high place. As soon as ye come into the city, you shall straightway find him, before ye go up to the high place to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, because he does bless the sacrifice and then only afterwards do they eat that be bidden. Now therefore get you up, for about this time you shall find him. Hey, come on. What coincidence that at this specific moment where Samuel is going up, but he's still in the city. He hasn't gone up yet to where the feast is being gathered. He's still in the city. And if you quickly go right now at this very minute, you will find him before he goes up. And then, of course, on the other side, we saw how God told Samuel to wait in the city for the man that he will show him and then go up to the feast. So see how God's plans is amazing. He's planning, He's timing, He's working behind the scenes is just astonishing. So they went up into the city, and when they were come into the city, behold, Samuel came out against them to go up to the high place. Right. So as they entered, look at this coincidence, né? In Afrikaans, toevallig, né? Coincidentally, the moment Saul entered into the city, Samuel entered from the opposite side, and they were facing one another. And as Samuel faces Saul, verse 15, God spoke to Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, and he said, tomorrow, this time. So God spoke to him, let's say it was 12 o'clock. And he said, tomorrow at 12 o'clock, I will send you a man out of the land of Benjamin. He thinks he's looking for his donkeys, but I brought him here for you. And you will anoint him to be captain over my people of Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry has come unto me. And when Samuel saw Saul, Yahuwah, at that very moment, 12 o'clock, at the very second when Saul walked into the city. Remember, he wanted to turn around. He was in Ephraim looking for the donkeys. He was in Shalisha, in Shalim, in the land of the Benjamites, and then he wanted to turn back home. But things worked out in such a way. When they came to Zuph, was it Zuph? Yeah. Then the servant said, let us just go one more place. So as things worked out at that very second, out of all the days, all the weeks, all the hours that this could have happened, at the very moment, let's say it was 12 o'clock, when Saul walked in, God said to Samuel, behold the man whom I spoke to you of. This man shall reign over my people. Then Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate and said, tell me, I pray you, where is the seer's house? So here comes Saul walking into the city, and at the gate, Samuel is waiting for him. And out of all the people that is at the gate, remember, this is a big city. There's lots of people, especially now. There's a feast gathering, there's a sacrifice, and the whole city is waiting for Samuel to come. So there's a lot of hustle and bustle, and people with donkeys and camels and women and children and blah, blah, blah. All these people. And out of all the people, Saul walks straight to Samuel and he says, excuse me, sir, I'm looking for the prophet. Do you maybe know where he is? My goodness, it's the man you're looking for. This man you're asking is the prophet. How amazing does God's plans come together? Do you remember the A-Team when I was about 13 years old? I used to love the A-Team with Murdoch and what was it, BJ, that guy that was always strong. And then, of course, I can't remember the old man, but he always said he had a cigar hanging in his mouth. Whenever they had a completed mission, he would say, I love it when a plan comes together. And this is just, I love it how God's plans come together. And Samuel answered Saul and said, I am the seer. Go up before me unto the high place, for you shall eat with me today. And tomorrow I will let you go, and I will tell you all that is in your heart. And as for your asses that were lost 3 days ago, set not your mind on them, for they are found. And on whom is all the desire of Israel? Is it not on you and on your father's house? Wow. Samuel knew already about everything. He knew about who Saul's father was. He knew what Saul was busy doing, trying to find the donkeys. Saul didn't say, "Oh, hello, you the prophet. You know what I need. Here's a quarter of a shekel from my servant for you. Here's a present. Please, please, please tell me where's my donkeys." He didn't have to say nothing. Samuel already knew. And he said to him, "Out of all the people of the city, out of all the people in the land, you will be the one that will sit right next to me to eat the meal and to share the feast today. The whole city is waiting for me, but I am waiting for you. Now that you are here, I can go up to bless the sacrifice and start the celebrations. I couldn't do it without you." And how amazing is this, that God has given all this to Samuel beforehand. And here in the reply of Saul, we see a shadow picture of Gideon. Do you remember Gideon, who also was from Ephraim? Remember? I just want to make sure he was from Ephraim. Oh, it's actually Manasseh. He was from Manasseh, representing the 10 lost tribes. But he also said in Judges, what was it? Judges 6. "Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my father's house." This humbleness when God called him to be the leader of Israel. We see the same humbleness here in Saul. 1 Samuel 9 verse 21. "And Saul answered and said, Am not I a Benjaminite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel? And my family is the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin. Wherefore do you speak like this of me?" And Samuel took Saul and his servants and brought them into the parlor and made them sit in the best place among them that were bidden, which were about 30 persons. And Samuel said unto the cook, "Bring the portion that I gave to you, of which I said to thee, keep this one side." So not only does Saul, who was just a young man a few moments ago looking for his father's donkeys, not only was he from a small poor tribe and he's the least of all the families, but he now gets the best seat. And the day before, when Samuel was preparing for the feast, he already told the cook, this in Afrikaans noem ons dit die skaap se bout. What do you call it in English? The buttock, the backside of the sheep, the best, choicest, softest piece of meat that's on the sheep. This piece, you must keep it aside. Don't serve it to anybody. Keep it separate. I will tell you who to serve it to. And the cook took up the shoulder, and that, okay, so, I said the buttock, the backside of the lamb. But I recently learned, actually, I forgot about it now, when I recently bought a whole lamb from somebody, she told me, "Do you want me to cut the shoulder up, or do you want to keep the shoulder in one piece?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, as long as I've got the buttock side." What is lamsbout in Engels? Leg of lamb. So I said, I know the leg of lamb must be whole, because we usually put that into the oven. Don't cut that up. But I don't know about the shoulder. And she said, "You know what? The shoulder is actually even softer than the leg of lamb. So I'll keep the shoulder one intact for you as well." So Samuel asked the cook to keep the shoulder part, the choicest part, aside. And the cook took up the shoulder and that which was upon it and set it before Saul. And Samuel said, "Behold that which is left. Set it before you and eat. For unto this time has it been kept for you, since I said, I have invited the people." So Saul did eat with Samuel that day. And when they were come down from the high place into the city, Samuel communed with Saul upon the top of the house. And they arose early, and it came to pass about the spring of the day. And Samuel called Saul to the top of the house and said, Up, that I may send you away. And Saul arose, and they went out both of them, he and Samuel abroad. And as they were going down to the end of the city, Samuel said to Saul, Bid the servant to pass on before us. And the servant passed on before them. But stand you here with me a while, that I may show you the word of God. How beautiful, what precious time did Saul spend with Samuel at the feast, at the top of his house, looking out over the city, talking, communing, having conversations, rising up early, sending the slave to go ahead and staying behind so Samuel can speak to him. What a wonderful relationship Samuel and Saul had. So sad that this relationship came to the point where Samuel, with tears in his eyes, had to tell Saul, You're going to die. God has rejected you. How sad. Let's look at a couple of interesting facts. So there was a man of Benjamin in verse 1 who was a mighty man of power. And we see in the book of Acts how they recall the history. Acts 13 verse 21. And afterward they desired a king, and God gave unto them Saul, the son of Kish, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years. Interesting how even this Antichrist figure, because Saul turns into a real beast, how even him served for 40 years. We have looked at 40 years in the book of Joshua and Judges, and of course Genesis, and in the life of Yeshua. And we understand the messianic meaning, seeing how the Antichrist himself, the beast, David had so many opportunities to kill Saul, but he never did. And God allowed Saul, the Antichrist figure, to also rule for 40 years, showing us how close the true Christ and the Antichrist is next to one another. It was never told us if Samuel accepted the gift that Saul and his servant gave to him, or was intending to give to him. Because the reasons that people work for God is not for reward. We see that even when there was a prophet in the time of Jeroboam, in 1 Kings 13 verse 7, the king said unto the prophet, Come home with me, and I will give you a reward. But the man of God said unto the king, Even if you want to give me half your house, I will not go with you. I will not even drink water or eat bread with you. Because a prophet does the work of God. He doesn't do it for reward. And sometimes the prophets would not even take anything from the people that they brought the message to because of the evilness of them. But you only refuse a reward as a prophet when there's a reason for that. Because like in the days of Elisha, the king said to his servant, 2 Kings 8 verse 8, Take a present in your hand and go meet the man of God and inquire of him, saying, Shall I recover from this disease? So this was quite a nice gift, 40 camels' burden. And they came and stood before Elisha. And Elisha said unto him, Go tell him you will recover. So sometimes there's great rewards for the prophets. But we see that almost all the prophets of God in Scripture, none of them were rich. None of them worked for God so that they can get reward. Those who did, like Biliam, only got their behinds kicked. Because when you work in God's kingdom, you do what God tells you to do. God will look after you. So there is a reward for you to be received. But you don't do it for reward. And sometimes you might decide to not even take any reward, depending on the kind of message and the kind of person. Because the message and the person to whom you're giving it has a great influence on what's happening in God's kingdom. Again, with Jeroboam, he told his wife to disguise herself in 1 Kings 14, to disguise herself and go to Shiloh to see the seer, the prophet Ahijah. Ahijah was blind. So she tried to deceive him so that he didn't know she was Jeroboam, the king of the 10 northern tribe, the house of Israel's king. But of course, Ahijah knew because God told him that they're trying to deceive you. But she also brought him a great gift. But I don't think Ahijah took this gift either. Go with 10 loaves of bread and cracknels and a cruse of honey, and go to the prophet and ask him what shall become of the child. And just like with Saul, the message from Ahijah to Jeroboam wasn't very good, where God said to Jeroboam, you were loyal to me in the beginning. You kept my commandments, but then you turned away from me. Therefore, the message you get today from Ahijah the prophet is not going to be so nice. There's a lot of information that we don't have. There's so many books that got lost over the years. If we look at 1 Chronicles 29 verse 29, now the acts of David the king, first and last, behold, are they not written in the book of Samuel the seer, and the book of Nathan the prophet, and in the book of Gad the seer? So Samuel the seer, we have his 2 books, 1 and 2 Samuel. But Nathan the prophet, we don't have his book anymore. And Gad the seer, who was seeing, who was getting visions from God, just like Samuel, we don't have his book anymore. But at the end of the day, there is so much information already in our own Bibles. Let's first read our own Bibles before we care about the other books. But it would have been nice to make sure that we have those authentic books today, because you can go online and buy them, but how do we know they're even authentic? Looking at verse 21, where Saul said, am I not from Benjamin, the smallest of the tribes? Look at how beautiful in Psalm 68 verse 27. Let me read from verse 26. Bless ye God in the congregations. Bless the Yahuwah our Elohim from the fountain of Israel. There is little Benjamin. Little Benjamin, he was the last born. So that is why Saul says it's the smallest of all the tribes. Alright, so tomorrow we'll continue with chapter 10, where Saul gets anointed as king.